Archazias Island is coming out this weekend. And for much of you, you might be like me and you might be Doc enthusiasts. That's right. Drastic measures aside, it is time to talk about what we can do to our Doc Amethyst Steel deck and see how we can make them better. On average, we have gone away from the natural budget version, but I am going to be focusing that and showcasing my final budget list going into this weekend. So those of you that really enjoyed the idea that Doc could be an under $100 deck, what is the best version of that deck, and kind of why we're making those decisions to keep it that way. And if you want to see even more than that, we're going to have something for you later as well. But for now, let's talk about the Amethyst Steel cards in set 7. So for this video, we're going to be utilizing Dreamborn.ink. It's a lot easier to kind of put everything up on screen, kind of scroll through them and discuss whether or not they're going to be good enough. I think to keep this video a little bit shorter on the side, I'm going to just quickly read off the cards I think are just not realistic. Probably don't even need to think about them. Dolores Madrigal, definitely not happening. Pain is a 1/3 is maybe, but we have Olaf already and we like warm hugs. Archimedes is a 2-cost 2/2 with like a really unique ability. Probably still a giant fall off unless we're trying to shift into other Archimedes and we need it more, but I still don't think this one's good enough. Elsa is a bit more interesting. The Trusted Sister is the 2-cost inkable 2/3 with 1 lore and the ability What Do We Do Now? Whenever this character quests, if you have a character named Anna in play, gain 1 lore. Considering our choices for Anna are pretty bad in just Amethyst and or Steel, I don't think this card is going to get any love for Amethyst Steel Doc, unfortunately. Honey Marin's a pretty interesting card. 2-cost 2/2, 1 lore with the ability Tail of the Fifth Spirit. When you play this character, if an opponent has an exerted character in play, gain 1 lore. I believe that Honey Marin's the first card on the list that we can truly take a consideration for. This deck has always been kind of known for the idea that we can gain lore outside of just questing. The very first versions of this deck had, Gathering Knowledge and Wisdom, Bosses on a Roll as cards that you played in it, and they were pretty suitable cards. So anytime that we can get a card that does something similar to White Roses, something similar to Goat, conditionally, it is definitely a consideration. I think for the budget versions, this is definitely a huge addition. This is a very good card. It probably matches maybe some of the better 2-cost cards in the deck, if I'm being completely honest. So I think for the budget version, Honey Marin, definitely a go. Raj is the 2-cost inkable 3/3 with 1 lore and is the illusion characteristic, which means he has the ability Vanish. When an opponent chooses this character for an action, banish them. So a 2-cost 3/3 is pretty good. Madam Snake, one of the best cards in the game. Mr. Smee, one of the best cards in the game. The problem with this card is that I don't know that you really need the 3/3 stat line at the cost of it having Vanish. The idea that it just gets taken away from Let the Storm Rage on doesn't feel too great. If it had the ability to survive Let the Storm Rage on as just a 2-cost 3/3, this card would clearly be like phenomenal for Amethyst decks. But considering it does have the Vanish keyword, I just don't think that this one is really what the deck needs per se. I can definitely see trying it out if you feel like this metagame is not really playing the actions that are going to remove this card. But even then, I still think his stat line is going to be pretty low impact as opposed to some other characters that we could be playing. Yzma, the 2-cost 2/1, we're not playing that card, even though it's cute. Bucky, the 3-cost 3/2, certainly not playing this card either. And then, of course, we have the Giant Cobra, the 3-cost 4 strength 4 willpower 1 lore that is an illusion with Vanish, but it also has the ability Mysterious Advantage. When you play this character, you may choose and discard a card to gain 2 lore. Giant Cobra is likely a top 5 card addition from the set in general to the entirety of the metagame. So, of course, we are going to be playing this in all of our Amethyst Steel decks in some number. Bright spot is that it is an uncommon, so it should slot nicely into our budget decks without really breaking the bank. Kashikim, I don't even know how to spell this name. 3-cost 4/3, we're not playing that. The wonderful Brother Bear here, 3-cost 1/4, Challenger 2. During your turn, when this character is banished, the challenge return this card to your hand and gain 1 lore. While it's interesting, while it can do cool things and be repeatable, I think for the cost of it and the time it takes to do, maybe you can get away with playing this in like a Cogsworth variant and try utilizing those things. But I just feel this card's not going to be good enough. It might fall a little short. But hey, time will tell. A 3 cost 3/4, with Rush would be outstanding. So if we can utilize a card like Cogsworth on repeat, it has potential, I suppose. But I think for now, I'm gonna sit on the Magical Bear here. Iago, 4 cost 4/6, evasive, and of course, again, we are an illusion, so we have Vanish. But the stats on Iago are really, really good. My only true fear is that it's just if we pay 4 for a card that just simply gets removed by a song, uh, with a giant, willpower that we have, it feels like it might come down, but it's also tough. Like it trades very well into opposing genies. 4/6 is not easy to get rid of, specifically when evasive, when you don't have action specifically to remove it. So if the metagame is not as action heavy, I could see this card just being a nice little addition as like a tech answer to certain parts of the metagame, but it's tough. The vanish ability is a little weary, and it really is going to depend on where we are in the metagame if the card is good or not. So for now, he gets a big shiny maybe. Jafar, the newly crowned, is just a bad sorcerer Mickey with not enough illusions to ever make it matter. So we're going to stick away from him right now. But the enchanted, pretty gorgeous. I'd be happy to have it. Panic, nope, we are not panicking. uh Tanana. We are also not Tananaing. Hey guys, want to quickly interrupt and remind you about our Amethyst Steel Doc Guide. This is a deck that we've been working on since September of last year. It's a deck that through every set, through Azurite Sea, and now through Archazias Island, we're going to continue to work on. We believe it's one of the best decks in the metagame. Melissa has spent the last 6 weeks absolutely crushing with her version of Amethyst Steel Doc during the second half of the Azurite Sea metagame. And honestly, we're going to push right through and we're going to continue to be as skilled with that deck moving forward. So if you want even more information than this video is going to provide you, definitely go check out this guide, join the support tier on Metafy, and you get this guide for free. Great way to support the Forbidden Mountain, and definitely a great way to get yourself a little bit more skilled at Disney Lorcana. The Queen. I think the Queen is a really interesting new card. The 4 cost, inkable, 4 strength, 3 willpower, 1 lore with the ability No Ordinary Apple. Exert, choose 3 cards from chosen opponent's discard and put them on the bottom of their deck to gain 3 lore. If any princess cards were moved this way, gain 4 lore instead. So the Queen is quite interesting. It does, give a nice little bit of reach when unchecked. It might only be good in very specific matchups. The idea that it's when you have to exert, so we can't also quest. Again, I talk about Hiram all the time. It blows my mind that they made Hiram the way they did, and every other opportunity they have to utilize ability that's similar, they chose to tell you that no, questing and getting abilities is too good. So it's just something that we go back to noting that how powerful Hiram is and what the key difference of it all is. The idea that we have this exert ability, and I think that if you can exert this and you can gain 3 lore, it's just okay. If there's any world where you can do this twice and gain 6 lore, then yeah, I think it's above rate on pretty much every other version of a 4 cost card that gains lore. But you have to have 3 cards to get rid of. Um, Also, I don't really care about the princess text. I think it's cute for flavor, but I don't think like if it happens, we're happy about it. But it's definitely not the reason you would play this card to begin with, unless somehow we get into some crazy princess metagame. But all in all, I think that this card, for me, very likely does end up falling short in Ruby and in Amber. There's some other ways to utilize this card a little bit better to by readying it and kind of using its ability twice in a turn. And I think that that's really what this needs to be a true consideration. In Amethyst Steel, we really can't do that. So I just feel like we're probably not going to be playing the Queen. Treasure Guardian is the new 4 cost 3/3 with 2 lore and the ability Untold Treasure. When you play this character, if you have an illusion character in play, you may draw a card. If this was like not specifically targeting illusions and it was just, I don't know, targeting any other characteristic that we have more than 4 of, this card would probably be okay, but also probably just too slow. We still have rabbits, we still have genies. I don't know that we're gonna be playing Treasure Guardian anytime soon. Chernobog is another card that I really like. I think it's interesting. but I don't see it being really in the dock versions. Maybe the more heavy mid range versions might pick up a Chernobog, but I'm not really crazy about it. I don't think there's any world we're playing Cusco. I think Madame is likely too expensive for the like dock versions. So again, I don't think we're going to be playing rough with Madame Mim anytime soon. Taka, way too expensive, way too big. Donald Duck, while super interesting, also way too expensive and uninkable. However, the enchanted is absolutely beautiful. And of course, the final character here is Mufasa. Again, our only shift target from Mufasa is a 4-drop 4/4 that's vanilla, so I just don't see it. While I love the idea of a 5 cost of a 7 cost 5/7 with 2 lore and then evasive, shift, and resist. Putting this card into play on turn 5 would be pretty nice. It would basically remove any evasive threat in the game. It has resist. It'd be really hard to get rid of. So I think it's a really good card. I just think in general it might be too slow, and we don't have a natural shift target or a really good shift target, I should say. So I just don't see it happening. But it's very possible that the street ratch decks, limited commons, uncommons, they might play this card. Let's talk about some of the actions. Magical Maneuver. Return chosen character of yours to your hand, exert chosen character. I think this card's very good. I think there's certainly a world that we will play this card. I think the mid-range versions might be a little bit more excited to play it, but I think in general, this card will certainly see some play and definitely be worth trying out early. Show Me More is each player draws 3 cards for a 2-cost uninkable action. I personally think that this card is phenomenal. I really think that it's going to have a home in docked list. I just think that you're going to be able to build this deck a certain way to simply draw a bunch of cards and be able to close out games just by not even having to quest. By cards like White Roses, cards like Cobra, cards like Goat, cards like Gathering Knowledge and Wisdom. Like the list goes on about the cards that you can draw late in the game by drawing 3 cards to just close out the game and finish it. I really think that Show Me More is going to be a staple in Amethyst Steel Doc decks. Restoring the Crown as a 6-cost uninkable with the ability exert all opposing characters whenever one of your characters banishes another character in a challenge. This turn gain 2 lore. Again, I think restoring the crown is only specifically going to be good in the mid-range and or control versions. We're not going to put this in some like doc aggro list, that's for sure. But the ability of restoring the crown is so game changing that it's really difficult to not at least consider playing it. And I think that there's certainly going to be a world where this card does see some play in some of these lists and definitely as a mirror breaker. A lot of times in the mirror, we kind of sit there, stare at each other, and wait for like the most opportune moment from an Elsa and things like that. Restoring the crown just adds another way to really flip the script of the game by exerting your opponent's whole board and then making the best trades you want to keep your most characters in play. And while doing that, all of your characters are gaining 2 lore. It's a massive swing turn in a world. If Amethyst Steel becomes a true like top 3 deck in the metagame, this card will probably very likely be a core reason to play for tech matchups in the mirror. This is my family. 2-cost uninkable action song, gain 1 lore, and draw a card. I think this card's great. I think it's certainly very powerful for the budget list. I think it's possibly even going to see play in a mid-range list in some number. Very often before we played cards like Friends on the other side as an occasional card. This card, the idea of just like giving something to do with your snake or something to do with your Cahoons is fine. Like gaining that conditional just game 1 lore draw card is great. Even singing with Rabbit later on is great, even though it's only a 2, you're not getting a total 4 out of it. But this is a perfect card to sing with Rabbit. So I think that This Is My Family is going to see some play, definitely a test-worthy card early on. Last and certainly least, the 3-cost uninkable Amethyst Coil. Its ability of magical touch during your turn. Whenever a card is put in your inkwell, you may move 1 damage counter from chosen character to chosen opposing character. This card seems pretty unplayable, and I do not think we are going to play it. Now let's take a look at some of these steel cards. So we have 21 new characters here. Hey, no chance. We have no reason for that, goon. Mulan, the Disguised Soldier, 1 cost, 2 strength, 1 willpower, 1 lore with the ability Where Do I Sign In? When you play this character, you may draw a card and then choose and discard a card. I really like Mulan. I think that there's definitely a world where this is worth playing. it's worth testing for sure. If you want to be a little bit greedy on uninkable count, because there really are a lot of very, very good uninkables. You know, right now we're seeing This Is My Family. We're seeing Show Me More. We're seeing Gathering Knowledge and Wisdom. We have Docs. You know, like that's just a couple of these. There could be more. We could be playing Fire the Cannons again. Like there's so many uninkables in the deck that if you wanted to be greedy and try and play like a list with 20, 22, I think that you would have to kind of accept the fact of playing Mulan, also Maleficent biding her time as well. So if it's like in any of those worlds where we want to be greedy, play a higher uninkable count, then I think we kind of have to land on playing Mulan, probably over Broom would be my guess. So if we wanted to play, you know, Maleficent, Chernabogs, Diablo, and then Mulan as an option, because then we would also probably be playing like Fire the Cannons, which is another one drop. You know, you could go further that you could play Pascal. Like you can definitely like really, you know, be creative with your one cost slot. But if you're gonna play a deck that has, you know, more than 14 uninkables, then I think Mulan is where you want to be, just so you don't get like too hampered. Obviously, this deck can 100% function on the most cases on 3 resources. Sometimes we want to get to 4, but you know, maybe eventually we get to 5. Depends on how good our doc and like our repeating docs are. So, you know, I just think Mulan is a card that if it would not shock me if this is a card that we would end up like playing more often than not. Um, because I just think it helps you get through the early turns of the game. It helps you get to the cards you want to. It helps get rid of like the double docs and things like that we don't necessarily need. So I think a card like Milan is going to fit really nicely into Amethyst Steel for sure. Aquila, the 2 cost 3/2. Love the stats, but it's vanilla. We ain't gonna play it. Bolt, yeah, listen, 2 cost 1/3 with an ability that just really like is too slow. We much rather just play Milan and move on with life. We don't have a shift target for him, so we're not doing anything with him. Helga Sinclair is an interesting one. You know, I think that it's more likely this would see play in mid-range versions. More, I just don't think that we're gonna commit to this card in the aggro versions at all. Definitely not really like the budget versions, unless it just shows that we really need a good answer to Diablo and Fire the Cannons doesn't seem good enough, and we just want a guy on a stat, then like maybe we can play this card again. I wish it was just evasive all the time. It'd make it a lot more of an easy choice to put in there. But you know, between this with the option of like playing Calhoun, you know, it just seems kind of tough. So I don't know. Like this is definitely a card I would keep on my radar. It's definitely a card I would like purchase just to have in case that it shows that we like need this like evasive 3 strength character. But you also have to understand that it's pretty much unplayable into the you know, Ruby Sapphire matchups. Just doesn't do anything. It's gonna be banished by like anything at all, and it doesn't seem great. You're not going to use it for challenging it whatsoever. So like you're just going to be ditching this Milans and Cobras all day. So that's just a good note here. Mickey Mouse Inspirational Warrior. Now, while I don't think this card is going to be in like the normal versions of Amethyst Steel, if you're the type of player that likes to be creative, if you're the type of player that like really wants to just like try new things, then I think Mickey Mouse is a pretty fun card. You know, I think we can definitely make a tier fun version of Mickey Mouse and Amethyst Steel with just Cogsworth or you know, cards like White Rabbit's Pocket Watch, and just be able to give him rush, kind of help you like buff him up with a meta mim or like a crab. If like you have to set up like this crazy combo turn to make it work, but then you can also maybe just like play it for value and say, hey, I'm going to put my card in play on turn 2 and see if my opponent turns sideways and like challenge them that way. You do have Jafar, you do have Crab. Like there's a couple of different ways to buff this character up if they decide to leave him. So I think it's interesting. I personally, I said this about him in the card review. I'm not someone that's like, oh my God, I need to build this crazy wacky deck to put a 10 cost Goofy into play. No, I don't really want to do that. I would be happy just playing this card and then it turning into like a free 4 drop or a free 5 drop. Like if I just played like an Elsa off this character for free, awesome. If I played a Genie off this character for free, awesome. You know, I'd probably go to the extent of playing Tinkerbell or even like a Gantu, like any of those cards. If I could just put them into play for free, like, and I should say like for free in quotation marks, then I think that this is a pretty great tier fun card. And there's definitely a week that I'll probably show up to League and like attempt to play a tier fun Mickey deck because I do think there's arguably a reason to say this is the best Mickey Mouse in the legendary or super rare that we've gotten. We've seen glimpses of past, like um, the Wayward Sorcerer, in set one, the Sorcerer's Apprentice, the Steel one in set four, I think it was. And they've had like glimpses. I think this one is probably closest to the most playable, but it's still like a little bit under. But I do like him. I think he's fun. Razul, yeah, I mean, I think even in a Jafar deck, we're probably not playing this card, so just don't worry about it. Tuk Tuk, I just don't understand this card. Like, I would never play this card in a world where I could just play Kita. Personally, I think that this is significantly worse, and it's uninkable. If it was inkable, like maybe we can have a fun argument about it, but if you really want to bodyguard it too, play the inkable Kita 2/3, just better. Fazul is an interesting card. People have been talking about a bunch. 3 cost inkable, 2 strength, 3 willpower, 1 lore with the ability training exercises. Whenever one of your character challenges another character, if it's the second challenge this turn, gain 3 lore. While we can set up a deck that's like revolves around certain ways of exerting our characters, and you might be able to get away with this, like this card into an Elsa is pretty interesting. You can definitely cause some chaos there by exerting. We talked about other ways to play, like restoring the crown, to play the new magical maneuver, which is the return chosen character of yours to your hand to exert chosen character. Like, there's definitely ways that we can set up Vazul, and it would probably feel okay. So I think there's a world like if you wanted to build a deck around him, you could probably be successful with him, but I'm not like instantly crazy about including this card. I think I'm a little bit too worried about jumping hoops, but he is interesting. I do think on the draw, this card is very, very good. So it could be one of those like this is a card in the mirror that could really change and like kind of fluctuate the mirror a little bit as you can gain conditional lore and not fall too far behind in lore while still challenging and getting the right characters. Obviously, like anytime we can set up 2 characters in play, one of them being a Calhoun. If we slam Vazoo, take a challenge, and then challenge with Calhoun, that Calhoun all of a sudden gains 5 lore. So there is some notable worth here. It just kind of depends on where the meta game goes and how much like we're challenging we're actually doing. But again, you can definitely build your deck to kind of utilize this card to the fullest. So I think it might have a chance. I think it's pretty interesting. Jafar, the Aspiring Ruler, is the 3 cost inkable, 3 strength, 2 willpower, 2 lore with the ability That's Better. When you play this character, chosen character gains Challenger 2 this turn. So this is effectively a smaller crab, and it's only a one-time crab, but it does have 2 lore. I think this card is really, really close. Obviously, if we are, an Amethyst Jafar deck, like we're all about this card for sure. I think it's a great addition to those decks, just because it's another playable Jafar. It's much better than the other 3 cost option for Jafar. Like this is like light years better than that. So I think that there's some love here. I think that there's a good chance that we can play this card. I also think that we might just put this card into like the mid-range decks. I think, if the mid-range decks are too slow into Ruby Amethyst, and if Crab oftentimes doesn't need to be +3, and you don't always need the ability to return Crab, then I think playing Jafar could just be strictly better in a more control metagame where we're just looking for more lore. Very often not, we just put a Crab in a play on turn 3 against Ruby Sapphire, and it's really only there to potentially sing a song or just gain 1 lore. So if we just say, hey, the card we're putting into play on turn 3 actually enables us to have a 2 lore character on turn 3, so we could have a 2 lore on 1, a 2 lore on 2, and a 2 lore on 3, and kind of still be at curve when necessary. I think that might be some merit there. Time will tell. Orville, this card's functionally unplayable. We're definitely not touching this thing. Raya, the Guidance Seeker. I think this card's interesting, but again, I just don't think it's what we're going to need. I don't think we're going to play this. This Aladdin, 100%, we're not an ally deck. This card's unplayable. Dr. Calico, 4 cost 3/4. Yeah, like, nope, we're not playing this card. Gantu, Experienced Enforcer. The 4 cost uninkable, 2 strength, 4 willpower, 1 lore with 2 abilities. Close all channels when you play this character. Characters can't exert to sing songs until the start of your next turn. and don't get any ideas. Each player pays 2 more to play actions or items. This doesn't apply to singing songs. So it really does, shut down a good portion of the metagame. If decks really are looking to sing songs on turn threes, like on their turn fours, Emerald Seal always comes to mind. If this card just functionally shuts off Ursula in a really big way, this card is very good into Amber Steel, functionally shuts off Ariel and things like that. This does a lot of very interesting things. I think this card is the epitome of taxes. I'm not truly convinced that this is the card that Amethyst Steel needs, but and I put the but on there because there is a world where on the play, this card might, in theory, represent more lore by keeping your characters around longer than a genie would. So there could be versions of this deck, depending on the metagame, that play 4 Pete and some number of Gontu. And the entire purpose of that deck is more based around bouncing Petes and Gontus to kind of just like keep your opponent from ever doing anything. I do think this card is functionally better in Emerald Steel. I think it's functionally better in Sapphire Steel. I just think they're probably better at those on average, and you can get away like with utilizing it a little bit better. But with the amount of text on this card and the ability to be so interchangeable, and like even in our bad matchups, we can just Cobra this card away, we can just Milan this card away. I think that it's very interesting. So I definitely would keep it on the radar. I don't think I'd keep it like for my week one deck or anything like that. But if we're just testing cards out, I think if you want to test this card out in like a mid-range version, I think it's pretty good. And if honestly, if you want to try and test it out in the aggro versions, is just like your top end that says, I'm gonna give myself like one more or two more cards in my deck that prevent my opponent from doing anything with actions and songs, then hey, I think that maybe this guy will have a chance. Kakamora, no chance. We're not playing this card. See you later. Here is that Mufasa I was talking about. We're never playing for vanilla. There's just no way. There's too many other good cards that can do some stuff. Bagheera, very interesting card. 5 cost, inkable, 4 strength, 3 willpower, 2 lore with bodyguard, and the ability you've got to be brave. During an opponent's turn, when this character is banished, deal 2 damage to each opposing character. I think this card is very interesting. um, you know, I just don't know that it's good. I think it's really only going to be good in Emerald Steel decks that focus around giving things reckless. Anything that like can just really force your opponent to run into this card and then get a free grab your swords is probably pretty good, but I just don't think it's going to be good in Amethyst Steel. I think we've never really been a deck that wanted bodyguards. Even if we did, we probably would just rather play Pluto on average, or I do think there's a world where this is realistically worse than Shenpo. So I just feel like it's cool, it's interesting. I just think it needs a very particular metagame for it, and you kind of need cards that force your opponent to do it. So I don't know. I just feel like it's gonna fall short. TikTok, nope, we're not playing this one. Miss Bianca, also just a nope, we're not going to play this one either. So with that, we're going to move on to actions. We have Double Trouble, which is a 2 cost inkable, deal 1 damage to each of up to 2 characters. I don't know. This card's interesting. It's probably not necessary whatsoever, but like if the metagame turns into a million one ones, then yeah, it'll be nice to have this card in our arsenal. But I just this is not something that I would be playing week one. I don't think it's necessary at all. I think most decks are not going to be filled with like 18 one willpower cards. So yeah, I think I would just stay away from this one for now, but be understanding that hey, there might be a time and a place for it, and it is inkable, so it's not that hard to play. Restoring Atlantis, 5 cost, inkable, action. Your characters can't be challenged until the start of your next turn. I don't know. This card's interesting, but I just don't see it. I don't think we're going to pay 5 for this particular uninkable. I think that if this is what we're doing, we're probably just not in a good position. I feel like this is going to be like a 1 out of 10 time card. Like 10% of the time, this card is going to save you some amount of lore, and 90% of the time it's going to be the worst card in your deck. So I don't tend to play cards like that ever. So I would just not play it. Steel Coil. I think this card is very, very interesting. During your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, you may draw a card, and then choose and discard a card. So it's, just a walking Zimba, a walking Mulan. Every turn we ink, we do some stuff. I don't know. I think that there's some merit to definitely testing this card, seeing if it helps out, like functionally get to the cards that you want. I think that this would allow for a much more creative version of your deck if you were like more interested in playing a toolbox version, of playing more like twos and threes of cards. Having this card, having Mulan would definitely go a long way in just creating this, hey, like I'm going to be a toolbox. I'm going to be good into whatever I want to be good in, and I'm going to play cards that help me get to the curve that I want to. So I just think that there's a world that like maybe one of these in your deck is okay. Could it be bad? Yeah, sure, it could be bad. Do I wish it was inkable? Of course, I wish it was inkable, but I do think it's interesting. I think maybe it has a chance. Training staff, yeah, no chance we're ever playing this card. Not happening. So yeah, that's the steel cards. Some of them interesting, nothing crazy, outlandish, impactful, but definitely some cards to test for sure. So there you have it. Hopefully I went through those quick enough. A couple good cards, Cobra, excellent. This is my family, excellent. Show me more, excellent. A couple, potential additions in Iago if you really want to just get into that, and among some other cards. I think that Amethyst Steel is in a really good position. I think that it didn't really need much help, if I'm being honest, and the idea that it got Cobra is pretty amazing. The uncommon, 4/4 is above rate on stats in a very good spot. It really meshes well with Lawrence as another 3-cost 4/4. So now your 3-cost characters are just either 2 lore on a stick or 2 lore when they come into play, and they can just fight so well. And while, losing to a Let the Storm Rage on kind of sucks, it's pretty powerful to note that it can't be brawled unless they specifically have like a Sapphire Coil anyway. So it's not like it's really hurting you in that matchup either. And it's also giving you a little bit more reach to end the game. So I think that in general, Amethyst Steel is going to be pretty well positioned early on. And I want to take a look at just a quick day one budget deck list that I've been working on. So we have the day one budget deck list. We have 48 characters. We got Chernobog's, Followers, Diablo, Magic Broom, and 2 Mulans. I was playing Maleficent Biding Her Time for a little while on this list to start, and I just don't love how kind of poor it is into 3/3s and into opposing Calhouns and stuff like that. It was just such a liability at an uninkable slot. I wanted to gain a little bit more consistency in my later turns because of Milan. The idea that Milan can just ditch an extra dock is awesome. She can also potentially get rid of an extra show me more just to kind of like keep the game moving forward and pressuring, because we only really ever want to play one show me more in a game. So I really like the idea of Milan here. It's definitely a card I'm going to test. But if you want to just go back to Biding Her Time, it makes the deck a little bit more expensive, but it is realistic for the card to still be very good under the ground. Honey Marin, again, I think this card is awesome for the budget version. Just adding another way to gain lore outside of questing is phenomenal. Madame Mim, always doing Madame Mim things. Doc is the centerpiece character, and he's now over $8. When we originally made this video a long time ago, back in September at this point, this was less than a $5 card. It's now doubled in price, so that's also taking the budget a little bit away from this one. Mr. Smee, still phenomenal. Giant Cobras, best card for us in Archazias Island. We still have our foxes. We still are going to play 2 white roses in the budget list. I think it's important to like utilize this card with Fox, with Madame Mim, and kind of just have a little bit more extra ways to gain lore. Pete is the definitely the namesake for this list in a way where we get to repeat with Mims and with Snakes, consistently getting Pete out there and preventing our opponent from doing what they want to do. 4 goats, another way, just hey, we want to gain lore. Then we're going to go play 3 Gathering Knowledge and Wisdoms and 2 Show Me More. That's a lot of uninkables right there, but they're all cost 2, so they all are pretty great. And then we're going to follow that up with 4 This Is My Family. We really want to be able to gain lore and draw cards, which is exactly what this card's doing. Gaining lore with Gathering Knowledge is great. And then Show Me More, while it doesn't do the gain lore or specifically just draw a card, we get to draw multiple cards, and it kind of enables you to have multiple lore for 2 resources over the course of the next few turns. And I'm still a big advocate for library. I think this is a key factor in the budget list for sure, as in conditional ways to draw more cards and make sure the game goes longer. In non-budget lists, we would play a card like Strength of a Raging Fire, but now that is way over budget. And right now, this list coming in on day one is at $105. The prices have definitely gone up because when I made this list, it was only $93. So I think the cost of Show Me More may have went up a little bit. It's also possible that Cobra went up a little bit. So these are some of the things. I also think that This Is My Family is $1. So realistically, This Is My Family is a common. That shouldn't be too much. The Show Me Mores are super rare, so there are going to be probably about like $3 to $5 to start. They'll likely go like below that, so it's not too crazy if you don't need them week one. And of course, Giant Cobra's at 230 right now. Even though you can make it cheap, buy yourself a starter deck, get 3 of them, and hoping you open the 4th one at pack. You get everything kind of right away, which would be nice. So I think that you can kind of avoid that too. So if we're just looking to quickly upgrade, it's not too bad. It also has Honey Marins at $1. Like these are not going to be $1 card. So realistically, the Honey Marins and the This Is My Families are probably closer to a quarter, which definitely puts this honestly under the $100 mark, which was the goal for this. So I hope you did enjoy this. I hope you can kind of get back on with Doc on a budget. It's a deck that I'm very fond of. It's a deck that I played last week, had some success with it. It's already been a lot of fun. The new cards are great. Show Me More is, I think, really underrated, and it's a card that you should probably get. I also love the Enchanted. I think, again, I said this somewhere on a podcast, like, hey, the Show Me More Enchantments might be kind of down. It might be similar to like Finders Keepers from a few sets ago, where they were really cheap. I think it's okay that Show Me More might be a really good card, and picking those up if you're an Enchanted gamer while they're cheap, big old thumbs up. So yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy this video today as we tried to update. Again, we do have the Metafy guide. Do not forget about it. It's a guide that is specifically designed for docking on a budget. And in that guide, we're going to be discussing the other versions of this deck and the non-budget versions. I really wanted to put this video out there particularly because that's really where the claim to fame came from this deck, was that it was a $75 deck that was able to go out there and really contend against the metagame very well. And I still think this deck can do that. It is a little more expensive now, but that's what happens when Doc just becomes like an every steel deck card. He's gone from $4 to $8, and in most cases, probably $10. His foils are like over $30. So that's just naturally going to happen as these decks start to get better and as those cards really just find their homes into other deck lists. But all in all, if you're looking for more information on that, please check the pinned comment below for the Metafied guide, and also in the description. Lots more information to be found there about Amethyst Steel Doc. Thank you guys so much for watching today. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button for me, and I will catch you in the next one.